Service. Hey everyone, welcome to Chef Sense. I'm your host, Chef Massey. I got to do a real quick podcast shout out. Look, for a new podcast, we're doing pretty well, but I have to be honest. As a chef, I'm a perfectionist. I want to do above average. So I'm going to keep jamming and getting better. Thank you all for continuing to plug in and listen to these episodes. But if you can, please share, like, rate, or review anything and everything that you can to spread the good word. I greatly appreciate it. And let's get into the episode. On the podcast, we have chef, founder, scientist, Linh Aven. That's everything, isn't it, Lynn? Who is just so awesome. Thank you for being on.
Yeah, it's really great to be here.
I guess for everybody, so you guys all know where this is kind of coming from. Lynn and I started a few months back, got pulled into this decent sized project together as consulting chefs. And actually, Chef Tom Tedesco was the other one. And let me tell you guys, if they couldn't have pulled together like an amazing trio of three people that are more entertaining, more talented, and just vibed with each other, we had stepped into this amazing project with a very cool multi-chain restaurant concept. We stepped right into this and evaluated everything, and I just had such a good time with you.
Yeah, it was the dream team. We got so much done so fast.
And I don't even know how he did it either. So to explain to you guys, they kind of brought us into their home or their base flagship store. So, we go in there, we're ready to go. I mean, we're all seasoned veterans, right? I mean, we're going to get it done. We love what we do. We're passionate. And what's really cool is that with the many years of service and a variety of different aspects that the three of us have behind us, the ego played no part in it. And I think that's so important. And I think that's just what I really, we fed off of it and we just pushed ahead because there's no roadblocks.
Yeah, it's just pure collaboration when you check your ego at the door.
Right. And then, that's good advice for all of us. And stepping into that, again, really cool concept. But remember when we walked into the kitchen, we were like, how are we going to do this? Because it was packed and the team was like cranking. And so we like went into the conference room and put our stuff down. I'm like, all right, here's our test kitchen, conference room. Cool. So, so we got in there and we made it happen.
Yeah, it was great. It was really wonderful meeting both of you guys. And even outside of it, I mean, after the project, we would still, catch up with each other and, explain what we're cooking for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that was so cool. Yeah, I mean, he just, threw that out there. And, but no, and I think too, the way you operate, it's like you just see it. As we work through it, we fit into our spots. I just really appreciated you on how talented you are, but also the fact of like your organization structure and just you were such a huge asset to that. So anyways, but yeah, let's get into your beginning. Where did this all come from? Your passion?
Oh, it's been a long and windy journey. But it's one that it kind of unfolded organically. So I grew up in California. I
Oh yeah.
went to school in Pacific Northwest, and then
Yep.
I came to Boston. I got my PhD in molecular medicine.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I was a good student, so I just took it as far as I could, but I didn't really think about what I wanted to do professionally after that. And it was a bad
Wow.
time to be in science. It was the 2009 recession. Labs were
Oh yeah.
up.
Yep.
So I ended up jumping paths. I realized that all along I had been really interested in food, but I hadn't pursued it professionally. So I started volunteering at a French bakery, Cafe Madeleine, and that just turned into a full-time opportunity to make from scratch croissants. Baker's hours, 4 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hauling 50-pound bags of flour up and down the stairs. It was great. But I realized I wasn't passionate about pastry. I just wanted to make normal food for normal people. So I joined Be Good, a fast casual restaurant chain. At the time, they had 78 units nationwide, and I was going to be the assistant to their chef who helped start it. And like literally the next day, I I became their executive chef because
Wow.
the main chef left for another opportunity. And I just jumped in and figured out, I was like, okay, let's figure out what fast casual means and,
Right.
what we could do here. And at Be Good,
Wow.
they were really trying to, be a better version of fast casual,
Yeah.
healthier food, a little bit more from scratch, better sourcing. They had their own farm on one of the harbor islands. And so
Oh,
I became really close with the Be Good farmer, Casey Ballin. And we visited a lot of farms trying to figure out contract growing and just learning the state of our food systems of today, that even though we could work with local farms, somehow it was cheaper and easier to get a head of romaine from California shipped all the way to the East Coast.
right.
So my head was starting to think about why this was and what could be
Sure.
done about it. We started talking about regenerative agriculture and why aren't more farmers practicing these techniques that seem like this is the way forward.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. And so March of 2020, I remember Casey called me and said, hey, all these things we've been talking about, regenerative agriculture and farming. Well, why don't we start a farm together? And I didn't have anything else to do. So I was like,
Oh,
let's
geez.
do it. Let's just
Right.
start a farm.
Wow. I
Let's
mean,
just
that's
jump
amazing.
in. Yeah.
O- Okay. So how did that go? I mean, obviously you're here. So,
Yeah. So we started the quest for land, which in the Northeast is pretty difficult.
okay.
And with the COVID housing bubble, we searched and searched. We ended up in a burgeoning farm cooperative in New Hampshire on the seacoast. So the idea was several farmers together to share resources,
Oh, cool.
which seemed like a great idea. But since we really were thinking about, if we were going to do a farm, what kind of farm did we want to be? And we really wanted to figure out the things that just naturally grew well in our area so that we wouldn't have to be pressured to put a lot of pesticides and herbicides on these
Hmm.
crops. Things that just naturally grew well, like dandelions. Our farm is named Dandelion Forest Farm because
Right.
if we could farm dandelions, that would be amazing. So easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can do some wine for sure,
Yeah. And, the greens for salad,
Sure,
the
salad.
roots
Yeah.
for tea. Um,
Yeah.
so we were really focused on edible perennial plants as kind of the focus of the farm, but that means we would need, really long-term tenure.
Hmm.
For many reasons, this farm cooperative fell through, but thankfully we
Okay.
were able to find land in Nottingham, New Hampshire through a land trust, the Southeast
Oh.
Land Trust. So this is preserved forever farmland, and we
Oh,
were able to
amazing.
get it more affordably for that.
Okay.
So now we're on 30 acres, but 6 acres of old meadow that used to just be hayed. And we
Oh.
have 200 chestnut trees in the ground. We have an acre of annual vegetables, medicinal herbs. We have layer hens, ducks, and a farm to table dinner series called the Farmer's Table.
Which is awesome. So are you now for your season, when do your dinners actually start and run through?
Yeah, so the dinners are June through October
Okay.
because they're outside. So we
Right.
wanted to make sure the weather was warm enough.
Yeah. There's a variety of things that you guys, did I see you pawpaws?
Eventually, yes, we will
Eventually.
have
Okay.
pawpaws. So
Okay.
yeah, a lot of the
That's gorgeous.
perennials are still in the nursery stage. I've
Oh,
been
cool.
trying to source a lot of seed and grow them out myself.
Oh, wow.
And so we've been doing annuals until then. So we can, you know, there's a lot of time to grow a lot of food until the chestnuts are much bigger. Right now, they're kind of like small shrubs, so
Okay.
we can grow food in between the chestnuts until they get bigger. And then the long-term plan is that as all these edible perennial crops are mature, then we will do less annuals, and then maybe we'll have some grazing animals like sheep to just take care of the pasture
Oh,
under the tree.
wow. Wow, that's so amazing. And chestnuts are so So tasty.
They are. I think a lot of Americans don't know. It's kind of skipped a generation.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so they just know it from, the Christmas song, but it's
Right.
really wonderful food and it's
Yep.
more of a starch than a nut. So it
Absolutely.
could be considered like tree corn that falls
That's
from the
so
sky.
funny you say that. Because it kind of reminds you of that starchy hominy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that kernel. And, and that's another good point too. And I think maybe and this is just me throwing out a thought because you said that, but maybe that blight that we dealt with in the country with our American chestnuts, especially here in New England, but there was like a blight that ran through
Yeah,
with
it
this
was
farming.
about like 100 years ago.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
we used
yeah.
to have a lot of American chestnuts. So now there's been a resurgence by mixing up the genetics, American, Chinese, Japanese,
Okay.
Korean. We can find more blight resistant varieties. And there are a number of farms in the Midwest and upstate New York that are growing chestnuts again. There is a
So
demand for
cool.
it. It also is a wonderful gluten-free flour,
Yeah,
so easy to
that's a
bake
great
with,
idea.
pasta.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. And I like actually candy in those and like slow
Mhm.
cooking them in a syrup. I mean, that's kind of typical, but I know that those are pretty popular and still like used over in Italy.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
that's kind of a big deal for them. It was like a street vendor food for the longest time.
Yeah, actually when I was in Italy for our honeymoon, it was in the fall and I remember seeing a street vendor. He was just picking chestnuts off the ground because they were falling from community trees and
That's
roasting
cool.
them, selling them. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't realize the path that I was on at that time, but looking back, I wish we had all these chestnut trees, mature around us
Oh,
now.
but yeah, there's also other things. I mean, you're doing some fermentations and stuff too. Is that
Yeah.
koji? Is that
Another part of the farm is just trying to keep an eye on food waste. And really it's more about respecting the plants and the harvest. So really
mm,
making sure we're using up every last bit. So I already know there will be times where we are left with surplus, and
yeah,
I want to be prepared when that happens. I can then put on my chef's hat and figure out some way of preserving the harvest. So I've been playing around with making vinegars, misos,
oh wow.
lacto fermentation, soy
Yeah,
sauce, seasonings.
that's so cool because actually I'm sure you've heard of them, South River Miso.
Hmm.
They're excellent and they really do it the old school way too. I mean that's so cool you're doing that too.
Yeah, and actually, well, KojiCon just happened, the Koji conference.
That's
There's
cool.
so many applications
Okay.
with Koji, and Koji can unlock just so many new flavors.
Oh yeah.
And so I've been trying to keep myself really focused on things that I can grow here. So
Yep.
growing Koji on corn that I can grow instead of rice or soybeans.
Yep.
And then one of the Noma ferments was using like a whole squash.
Yep.
And so what kind of miso adaptation can I do with things that I can grow here on our
Yeah.
farm?
That's so cool. It's funny too. I actually have a bag of koji up in my pantry area. So what is that called? Shio koji? And it's like this salted, like
Hmm.
umami. I mean, you take that and you don't need a lot of it, but like rubbing meats down before they go on the grill, mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely delicious. And
I,
it makes it so easy. It really just
yeah.
unlocks for chefs and for home cooks. When you have a pantry full of interesting ingredients, your job's just so much easier.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Fire cider. You think you'll ever get to fire cider, or are you probably already doing it?
Oh yeah, we already have lots of fires, which
Yeah.
I prefer to use it as a vinaigrette most first and foremost, rather than drinking it straight. I think it tastes
Okay.
great.
Oh, it is. Do a shot glass of that. Well, maybe that's too much, but maybe a tablespoon. But in syrups, you had a was that a pine syrup? Pine
Yeah.
cone syrup?
So in Italy, the traditional pine syrup is from the mugo pine. So they call it mugolio, where you pack unripe baby pine cones into sugar, and then the sugar draws moisture out from
Yeah.
it. It's kind of like the Korean chiang. Same
Okay.
principle. And so we can do that with basically any edible pine here, except the yew family. And
Okay.
it is like a really interesting flavor. I think it's
Yeah.
delicious. It's like pine and citrus notes, and then you just boil that down into a thick syrup.
Oh
Um,
wow. Yeah.
it's one of my favorite products for sure. That and you can make a tea with the shagbark hickory bark. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
Roast it, make a tea, and then add sugar and boil that down. And it's like a nice little nutty flavor and a
Yeah.
different way of making syrup than just tapping.
Okay. And then looking at like your area, I mean, 30 acres, do you see any like mushrooms popping up at all? Are you
You
getting
know,
any?
I don't see that many mushrooms.
Wow. Okay.
Someday I will be inoculating some shiitake logs
Oh,
and growing some lion's mane and reishi. It's on the list.
yeah, that's so cool. Over here in the Berkshires, like for us, I just spring is coming. It's like get ready for ramps and, then fiddleheads at some point. And so, morels are obviously in May, but getting out and foraging, I love grabbing hold of these mushrooms. I found a couple honey holes for hedgehogs, which was pretty cool. But Mayatake is just one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, even the chicken of the woods is a nice one. I actually did that one time in the oven in like a hotel pan and did some veg stock and herbs and onions and garlic and just took that chicken of the woods, that huge orange coral, and like basted it at a low temp for like 2 or 3 hours. And when someone would order it, I would kind of pull it out like a big piece of like prime rib. And then I did this plate with it, which was pretty cool. But no, I love the foraging and I love, the connection with the land. And that's where it connects me from not just my Anglo-American farming side of my family, but also my native side of my family, right? Of being where my feet are and pulling things from the land. But
Mm-hmm.
also, obviously, you want to know what you're grabbing. And so I build that foundation. But I don't know, it's just all the things that, you're doing and that you're sharing about is just, to me, it's really powerful. And it sounds like, that inspiration, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like in these other opportunities prior to this, and then stepping into this opportunity to have a voice in combating, our big ag system that we have here in the US and some of our programming, to do this on your farm must be a pretty amazing feeling, right?
It is. Sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming to
Yeah,
kind of take on the world's problems and solve it in my little piece of life here.
yeah,
But it's also an incredible opportunity. I think of this as my living lab to just try out a bunch of things, figure out the practices that work and don't work here. I think it's a really interesting time to be in food. We can pick and choose from so many global regions, but we can also choose to pick from different traditions across time and space.
yeah,
And so we can bring back some of these, ancient practices and merge it with our modern ones, and just figure out what's going to work best for us.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the foraging, it's really because we have access to all these global flavors.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's really nice to figure out what your little piece of land tastes like, right?
Sure.
And to be
Yeah,
really paying attention to that specific flavor, to
right,
be really so in tune with the seasons, not just, spring, summer, fall, winter, but
right.
there's such a narrow window on foraging. You really have to be checking in with those plants and looking around,
Yeah.
make sure you catch those windows.
Well, and it's funny too, like, the point you're bringing up. I mean, and that's farming. It's kind of a risky business. And kind of letting the land tell you what it's doing. And mushrooms are so funny like that because, one year you could have morels pop up and get a small flush, and then they don't come back for 3 years.
Hmm.
So, it's very funny like that. And I find it interesting because I think even our settlers, our families during the time, and indigenous people, that was all information that was passed down, as you were raised on your land and in the area. I mean, you knew which spots to check when. And that's, again, I think it really goes into the mindfulness existence of like, and again, that's just my opinion, but like not being so distracted that I actually spiritually get connected to the amazing people around me that inspire me, but also the land
Mm-hmm.
that connects you. So that's really cool. When you're talking about like your agroforestry that you do there, and you're doing your, what is that, the zero till? I mean, all of this work that you're doing, can you describe how you're planting and how you actually operate on your farm?
Yeah, we're exploring a lot of practices that ultimately are trying to create more of a closed loop ecology our farm. Practices that are going to benefit soil health. I really think that, a healthy soil is healthy plants,
Hmm.
which is easier to care for and will benefit us since we are eating those plants. And so, by not tilling the soil ever, all of our beds were created with our hands. We just suppressed the grass with cardboard to
Hmm.
smother it out, and there was no tilling. We don't have any heavy machinery here, and that was intentional.
Yeah.
Um, there's all sorts of communities in the soil, all these different organisms. They've built their little villages, and
Yeah.
I don't want to
So
just come
cool.
in and destroy them.
Right.
I want to support them. So, using compost that we make, making compost tea and spraying foliar feeds, really just a lot of interplanting of crops. So rarely do we see just one thing in a row together. I think, prioritizing diversity. This year, I'm only growing open pollinated varieties so that we can start working towards seed saving.
Hmm. Oh,
There's a lot of
cool.
hybrid seeds out there that the control's not in your hands anymore. You can plant
Right.
those out, but then you won't have those same flavors coming back. So I think there's a lot of interesting work in like natural genetic
Yeah.
selection
Okay.
that we can be doing. And yeah, just kind of trying to work with what we've been given. We're not doing any sprays, like no pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides. We could do it, and sometimes they could work, but I don't think we can understand what's really going on in our soils if we keep spraying these. It's kind of like putting antibiotics globally
Sure.
on our land.
Right.
We need to kind of let some of the diseases build up in order for things to come back into balance.
Wow, that's really cool. Okay. I've said before too with other farmers that, my farming family goes, way back to multi-generations in Northern California. We had 400 acres up there that my great-grandfather founded after he had gotten back and kind of established himself after World War One. And it just kind of took off, and my experience in growing up with all that, I've seen the effects on the land, the effects on my family members, that, due to, some of these processes that have been handed to our farmers way back then, with not, wanting a corrective action, but not really understanding the long-term effect. And it's pretty eye-opening. And I think the special thing is that today, where farming is going, in many of our local areas in New England and our New England farmers, and I know our other farmers across the country are working on that too, but there's just becoming a better voice for our future of farming. Even though we're kind of like combating our large corporate ag system right now, I think that a lot of the work that you're doing, I mean, it's all the foundational work for healthy longevity,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Absolutely. I mean, the food we put in our body, that is medicine.
Hmm.
It's important to be feeding ourselves nutrient dense foods.
Yeah.
And we're also designed that those nutrient dense foods will taste better to us if we're like really paying attention to what our bodies are telling us we want.
Right.
Yeah. So it's the 100th anniversary of biodynamics, a practice
Mm-hmm.
brought on by Rudolf Steiner.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and they were talking, 100 years ago about all these farmers coming together, and they're like, what do we do? It's the beginning of chemical fertilizers, tractors.
Yeah.
How do we farm? And I just think it's so funny. We're asking the same questions. What
Yep,
do we do in the face of chemical fertilizers and machinery and the bigger systems that be? But I think now people are paying more attention. I think
sure.
it's more normal to be having these discussions, and I think
Yeah.
that's incredibly helpful. Out of COVID, all CSA sales, farm sales went through the roof.
Unbelievable. I was so excited. I mean, that was so amazing for so many farms. Wow. And they went from like small farm stores to like they had to remodel. They had to
Yeah.
expand their selections. That was so cool. And talking to some of our farmers here too, they've kind of admitted that, there was a massive wave during COVID, like you said, but now it's kind of like dropped a little bit.
Hmm.
So how do you keep that, momentum? Because by going to our local farms, I mean, people don't realize that, like you had mentioned before, you've got this 3-pack of romaine heart that comes from, I don't know, San Bernardino or what have you, Bakersfield, or, and comes all the way across the United States. And nutritionally, I've said it before, but the longer it sets, the weaker it gets.
Hmm.
And to get these products with the integrity that you all provide um, is so substantial, not to mention your shelf life, the quality, and what you're getting from that produce or product. Even foraging for a mushroom. I mean,
Right.
you can go get one, like Mayatake out of the store and then go forage one and do it side by side. It's just unreal.
Right. But I think the convenience factor is really strong, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot going on with consumers. Money's a little tight right now. And if it's not just right there in the grocery store at an appropriate price, it's hard for people.
right,
It's not impossible. I think there probably are local farms around. You just got to go look for them.
right.
But what you're going to get is going to look a little bit different.
Yeah,
But I think that's okay. In our CSA, I tell people all the time, when you get a CSA from Dandelion Forest Farm, product's going to look really different. I
mhm,
love different colors and different flavors. And I also every week tell our share members, this is what I would do with your crop share to put it together to make the most use of everything. But if we're used to only romaine hearts, do people know what to do with the whole romaine lettuce?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's peel it down and then throw it out.
Or lettuce that's not, in a plastic bin that's triple washed in baby greens?
Right, exactly. And that, I mean, I think that's, I don't know. I think people now that they're realizing, because some of these, these Netflix documentaries are coming out and they're really showing, some of these that are, for example, Michael Pollan, really eye-opening to really the kind of the underbelly of what we're dealing with. And again, it's being educated. I mean, did I see you do workshops or and things like that too, by chance?
Yeah, we do a few
Tours?
workshops on the farm. Yeah.
Okay. And that's cool. What kind of stuff do you do with that?
So we've done a sheet mulching workshop.
Okay.
We've been thinking about doing one on like the three sisters
Oh,
growing.
very
For the
cool.
Abenaki do seven sisters.
Yep.
Um, Maybe doing some on like seed saving.
Okay. And I've
Anything will
done,
just get people to grow something, grow anything, even if you're in an apartment. Put a pot of basil in your windowsill. I
right, right. It's a start.
reconnecting in a tiny symbolic level
Right.
is a start.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny too, because like that, I have done the Three Sisters Garden, and that, man, they take off. I had like 21 of them. And I even grew this one of the squash I did was a Hopi Pale Gray.
Mm.
And they're huge. I mean, it went from like it's the garden patch all the way across my lawn. Like it was so happy. It's like I'm here. Of course I have to go out and sage and I do my whole communication with them because they're a living organism, right? I mean, I think whether it's a plant or anything, good energy feeds you, you know. But that's pretty cool that you're doing that as well. Obviously, just obvious question, but everything that you grow on your farm, you're doing like 6 courses and you're or multi
Hmm.
courses.
Yeah. So it's myself and my chef partner, Elizabeth Haskett.
Oh, cool.
We do a 6 course family style dinner for Farmer's Table.
Okay.
And it's 40 people. And it's
Wow.
just been a really wonderful way to showcase everything we've been talking about. Products that we forage, things that we've made, just produce that we're growing here, having these conversations, showing people these are the plants that your food is coming from. You can eat dandelions and dockseed. There are these edible plants are all around you right now. And then showing them not only what it is, but then making them eat it as well
Yeah.
to really reinforce the point.
And it's really enlightening, isn't it? I mean, is there anything that you plant-wise that you have done that you're like, I didn't expect it to do what it did and taste, and I was really surprised by it?
Um, so all of last season, I did a cornbread for the
Oh,
table,
cool. Yep.
and it's a really adaptable recipe. I've been playing around with alternative flours, and so I highlighted the dock seed. Everyone's got curly dock growing in their yard,
Yep.
and it's really noticeable when that brown flower stalk comes off. So we just pulled off all the chaff and ground it and added it to the cornbread, and it was just a really symbolic way of eating the weeds and trying not to use, not to view them as weeds.
Yeah.
And so that kind of set the tone for
Hmm.
the rest of the dinners.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, and you're located, do you want to let New Hampshire, what region or location specifically are you?
We're in the
Right.
seacoast, so kind of in between Portsmouth and Manchester.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
Mhm.
I should come to a dinner sometime.
That would be great.
That'd be so cool. I mean, you've got your CSAs, you're rolling through that. When it comes to getting the help that you need, how are you all doing that? I mean, that's farm labor.
Yeah. Well, I know how much time I have in a day.
Yeah,
So the majority of it is me right now. I'm hoping to have a college intern this summer.
so cool.
Um, we have a couple people helping with the dinners, and then my husband helps out with some of the infrastructure projects, but it's a lot. And
Yeah,
I have all these ideas and other projects I want to do, but I'm trying to take it one step at a time, and
yeah,
really planning things out, getting, systems figured out so we could be a little more efficient.
right, which is so cool. Wow. Well, looking at like how you're planning things in stages, like your ultimate dream from what in the amazing work you're doing now, where do you hope to see things go for you with this?
Yeah. So I live here, but I also live 20 years from now. And
I
yeah,
worked with you for a few days, so I picked up on it.
it's just figuring out, how to get there. But
Yeah.
I'm envisioning, a time where we have fruit from June through November.
Hmm.
Um, and it's almost all edible perennials. So I'm just doing a lot of pruning in the winter, harvesting, preserving in the summer, doing the dinners, and then taking a break in the winter.
Okay.
So right now it's kind of a little bit of everything, but hopefully focusing it more, and then out of the perennial crops that we're growing to develop more of a nursery, to encourage other folks to be growing these plants also.
Oh, wow. So would you actually do little grower packs, sprouts for people?
Yeah. So, and we actually have extra chestnuts right now that we're selling,
Oh,
chestnuts,
really?
hazelnuts. Yeah.
Ooh, hazelnuts?
Hmm.
That's awesome.
You just have to beat the squirrels.
Well, that's the same with the acorns, isn't it?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you're
But
doing.
usually I think there's just so many acorns in a mash year, you can keep up with them a little bit more than the hazelnuts.
Oh, okay, okay. Now,
Yeah.
now you do that too. Now that's a soaking and a leaching process with the acorns. Can you describe that process? That's kind of high
Yeah.
commitment.
So we just had a really good season last year. So you got to pick all the acorns, give them a float test. You keep all the sinkers, then just let them dry. And they're good for years in the shell.
That's
So when you
awesome.
need them, you can crack them out. The Dave Built Nut Cracker is really great, or you can get a towel and a hammer. Take all the nut meats out. grind them up and just I use the cold soak method. So you just
Uh-huh.
need to remove the tannin. So you just soak it in water. The water is going to turn tan,
Okay.
and you just give it several changes till it doesn't taste bitter. And then you can dry them and grind them up to use as flour.
That's so cool. And have you done like what do you like muffins or
Yeah, it's also
scone?
like a really nice alternative flour. And I think on with the rise of gluten-free baking, there's so many good recipes out there, and you can
Hmm.
just swap them in. Really good pancakes, crepes. They go really well in that cornbread also.
Right. Well, and again, it is a process, but you get so much out of it
Hmm.
from doing that and learning it. I know we were sharing before earlier, I was over there reducing, maple sap for maple syrup. And one thing that I've always appreciated is that getting the opportunity to step in someone else's shoes. To me, a chef, we're storytellers, and it's trying to do my best by you from what you provide, or, us collabing on something that we're in this coexistent journey together, that what goes on the plate really has power behind it,
Hmm.
and it's 100% real. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I really thrive off of that.
Exactly. I think tying it back to, if you just buy some bagged romaine hearts in the grocery store, I'm not sure you want to tell that story. There is a story there. Um,
Right.
but being a little bit more aware of the process and figuring out, where did our food come from? Where did those seeds come from? Who's been saving these seeds all this time? How did they
Yeah.
get to be here? How does maple happen from a
Right.
tree?
Yeah.
It gives you a new perspective on
Yeah.
all of the food that we consume on a daily basis.
Right. And, my other question I actually had down in just your thoughts, but as we see our farmers continuing to age out, there is a level of a gap that is starting to happen. And I'm a pretty logical person, but as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's because of technology and, the way things in life and societal shifts. I don't want to say we've become more comfortable, but we've been a little dependent on things. When you go into a no-till farm like yours, I mean, when you're done with a 10-hour, 12-hour day, I wouldn't even know what to say. I mean, there's like, is there any, there's a lot of stretching involved, I'm sure. But, there's quite a challenge with trying to, get our young farmers, because they are inspired and they are wonderful. But how do we, protect that and move it forward? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. It is definitely a challenge. The good news is I've met and continue to meet so many impassioned young people who want
Right.
to work the land. They
Yeah.
see that this is, a way forward for everyone. The biggest challenges right now, I think, are the cost of land and the cost
Yeah.
of housing and the cost of everything else. But
Yeah.
yet our food prices are continually artificially repressed.
Yeah.
So the economics of it make it really, really tough these days.
Right.
I don't have a silver bullet answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think people have to be more clever than ever, exploring more of these cooperative type models to do some sort of equipment sharing or labor sharing.
Hmm.
But I think on a smaller level, every dollar matters. So
Hmm.
when we vote with our dollars and we keep voting for smaller, more community scaled foods, that
Yep.
opens up a bigger market for these younger farmers to get a foot in the door and figure out a model that works for them.
Right. And that, it's funny, in you mentioning kind of that here they have the Berkshire Mobile Farmers Market,
Mm.
which is really cool. I actually had them on the podcast, but Berkshire Grown actually is the big piece to that. But they had gotten a grant to start this project where they can do these mobile farmer markets, and local farms could send their product or meet them at these locations where people had food insecurity could get it.
Hmm.
And it's not like a big stretch of a farmer's market. It's a small, I don't want to say a 10 by 10 with some tables, but it is a smaller version of it. And they also had a buying program that was very respectfully discreet to people that can or cannot afford it and how much they can afford to do, protecting their privacy on that. But that was really cool to see that to start to happen.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I think any way we can be, again, using everything that is grown.
Yep,
If
yep.
we can, as chefs, be creating ways or programs that, to let farmers know, hey, if you have B grade tomatoes, it doesn't matter because we're going to cook them up anyway. So if they
Right.
don't look perfect, I'll take them. To create that ahead of time, to be establishing those relationships. So all of those foods go somewhere that's not just to compost.
Right, exactly. That's actually a good idea for even possibly our school food systems as
Mhm.
well, those seconds. And it's funny, I remember reading a while back, and I could be wrong, but I thought there was something to when these vegetables or this produce has, not horrible blemishes, but they have some blemishes and some dings, some scarring, that their nutritional value is actually a little bit higher or stronger. Is that,
Yeah,
did you know
I've
about that?
heard that.
Okay. Yeah.
I think like a lot of produce that's grown in like the Andes because the
Mm.
altitude is so high, it
Yep.
stresses the plants out more. And so the plants have to put more nutrients and defenses up to support themselves, which then strengthens us. Or when a plant is getting eaten by something, it's trying to defend.
Yep.
And so it's actually better for us.
Yeah.
And probably the reason why a lot of grape farmers, they're not irrigating or fertilizing. They want stressed plants because that's more flavor.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for confirming that. This is just amazing. The wealth of knowledge that you have. I mean, your commitment to, what you're doing, it really is inspiring. I mean, I'm really grateful that, we've got a chance to, to meet, work together, and where I could learn more about what you're doing and what you provide. Because, I mean, you're on it, in so many ways. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like we're certainly on a learning journey. We certainly don't have anything figured out. It's nice to have the time and space to try a bunch of stuff,
yep,
and share this knowledge. In
yep,
as much as sometimes I hate social media, it's also a
yeah,
wonderful place to connect with folks and to put this
right.
knowledge out there. So it's just wonderful to be able to have normalized conversations about our bigger
Yeah.
systems and our smaller food systems.
Well, I know, and that's where I'm grateful for today. So where can people just go to your website, and are your tickets for your dinners for sale there?
Yeah, so we're going to be releasing our tickets end of March. If you sign up on our
Okay.
newsletter from our website, we'll let our newsletter folks have first crack at those tickets. And we're accepting CSA shares right now for those in the
Okay.
area. And yeah, folks who want to buy
D-
chestnut trees, we've got seedlings.
I actually think I need to grab a couple of those.
That would be great.
You never know, but like maybe truffle farming could be in your future. Well, cool. So thank you, Chef Lynn, for your time. This has been awesome. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, this was so great. We should definitely be doing this more often.
Thank you. I can't wait. Take care. Yeah, all right, everyone. That is a wrap. You can check us out if you like that. Subscribe. Also, the Instagram, Chef Massey. Let's keep it simple. chefmassey.com. Have a good one. Bye for now.